The most common mistake that I see when I'm critiquing my students' drawings isn't their proportions, isn't their details, but it's actually that their drawings look flat. But once I share just a few key skills with them, not only do they see their drawings just transform, but they actually go from finishing their drawings feeling deflated to actually feeling proud of how much depth their drawings have. So in this video, I want to go through those few key things that once you know them, your drawings will transform, and I'm going to share why most drawings do look flat and most importantly, how to fix them. Okay, so here we have 3 of my students' drawings, and you can see that all of them have this flat look to them, where they're just not popping out of the paper. And so why do these 3 drawings look flat? What do they have in common? Well, to answer that, we need to understand value and what value means. Because I'll let you in on a secret, learning this thing called value is the single biggest thing that you can do to improve the realism of your drawings. It's that important. So if you dream of one day creating that super lifelike drawing, maybe of a loved one or a pet, then listen up. When I talk about value, I basically mean how light or dark your shading is. And this isn't just a graphite thing, it applies to all mediums and actually all art styles. Value is just how light or dark your tones are. That's it. White is the lightest value you can get and black is the darkest value. And then of course you have all of the different grays in between. So in its simplest terms, value is just how light or dark your shading is. But how does value apply to realistic drawings, and how can we actually use it to create more depth in our drawings? Well, let's take a look at another drawing from one of my students, and you can see that next to the drawing I've actually got the reference image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch out the values on both of these photos, so for the reference photo and for the drawing. And you can see that once again, this drawing looks a bit more on the flat side. It doesn't have a whole ton of depth. Now, what you may notice as I'm swatching the reference is that we have a lot of different values in the reference. We have light values, we have sort of middle tone values, and we have those really dark values as well. Whereas if we swatch out the drawing, you can see there's a smaller range of values. We haven't got a lot of really dark tones. It's mainly just those lighter tones and maybe a couple of our midtones. And midtones are just those values in the middle of what we call a value scale. So I noticed that with drawings where they look flat, a lot of the time the artists have got in those lighter values and the middle ones, but we haven't got a lot of those really dark values. And I'll let you in on a secret, it's actually those darker values that add all of the depth to your drawings. And so the biggest mistake that I see with my students' drawings, which means that they end up with flat drawings, is that they just don't do enough shading and they leave their shading too light. And so why is this? Why so many times do I see a lot of beginners and even more intermediate artists have this problem where they're just doing their shading too light? Now, it'd be logical to think maybe it's a skill problem, but actually I found that it's more of a mindset problem and definitely a confidence problem as well. Because the thing is, going dark with your shading, it can be scary. It can be really scary to go in with more pressure on your pencils or to use darker pencils, because it can definitely feel more permanent. When you're building up those darker layers of shading, you may be scared that you're going to ruin your drawings that you've poured hours into already. And that can be really intimidating, especially if we've got something down on our paper that we're kind of already happy with, it's looking good, and we don't want to mess that up. Especially if you're drawing like a face and the hair and you've got the eyes looking good, or you're at least semi-happy with it. It's scary to then do another layer where you're going really dark. Often I find with my students that they know they need to go darker, but they're kind of just too scared to take that leap and actually do it. But then there can also be more technical reasons behind it. Maybe you're just using a HB pencil for your drawings and that pencil just can't get dark enough. It can't reach those really dark values. So you may find that just by using a broader range of grades of pencils that you actually start to see more depth in your drawings, because you will get those darker tones in. Or you may just think you've gone dark enough and not realize that you need to go darker. But whether your reason for having flat drawings is more because of a mindset problem or a technical issue, it's definitely worth working on fixing those issues, because once you get your values accurate in your drawings, it makes the world of difference. And I just want to share with you a couple of my students' drawings where once they worked on value, they saw a massive difference. You can see here's just a few of my students that have had that massive leap in their understanding with value. And it didn't take ages. A lot of the time it can just be the next drawing, or they've just done a few tweaks on the same drawing that they've left to the side for like 2 years. I've had a student where they've worked on a drawing, left it aside for 2 years because they didn't know what else to do to actually improve it. And then they learned about my lesson on value inside my membership, and they actually then was able to improve that drawing to give it a bit more depth. And it didn't take this massive boost in skill or hours of practice. It was just learning one simple thing that actually made the world of difference. And so these are students from inside my membership, the Level Apart Club. And if you're interested in that, then I'll leave a link to the waitlist in the description below. The membership is all about helping you dust off your pencils and actually learn the skills you need to create super realistic drawings, so that you can create the drawings of your loved ones or pets that you're proud of to hang on that wall or even give as a gift. So once again, I'll just leave the link to the waitlist in the description if you're interested. But now that we understand why drawings look flat and we've learned this thing called value, how can you actually apply it to your next drawing so that it has a ton of depth? Well, now I want to take you through my 3-step process for creating more depth using value. The very first step that I want you to do is something you should do before you even start the drawing, before you even start shading, and that is analyze your subject. If you're using a reference, have a look at it, look at where the lighting is coming from, what side is the light coming from, and how is that creating shadows in your subject. I actually love going in using Photoshop, but you can use something called Microsoft Paint or any other free tools. And I actually just love creating swatches, like I showed you earlier, of my reference image. I like to pick out which values are the lightest and where are those darkest values, so that before I even go in to do all my shading, I have a clear understanding at where the different values are in my drawing. And I just know then that when I'm drawing that subject, I'm going to be more likely to go dark with my shading because I'm aware how dark it needs to be. I've already analyzed it and I specifically swatched out where that value is along the value scale. Once you know where your lights and darks are in your subject and you understand the lighting and how that's creating the shadows, the next step is to use the right supplies for your drawings. So I touched on this earlier, but you want to make sure that you are using pencils that range your values. So whether you're using graphite pencils or whether you're using color pencils, pastels, it really doesn't matter. Make sure that your supplies cover the range of values that you will need to achieve in your drawings. So if you're using graphite pencils, yes, you might want to use that HB pencil, but that's only going to cover your lights and midtones. You need to add in like a 2B, 6B, 8B to actually get in those darker values. And personally, I actually love using this set of pencils. This is the Faber-Castell matte graphite pencils. I love these pencils because they get super dark. There's like a 14B pencil in here, and it's my favorite pencil because it gets so dark, like jet black. I've got it here. You can see how much I use this pencil just because of how short it is. Look at that, so short. And this gets those values so dark, it reaches that black value that you need, but also because it's the matte pencil set, it doesn't have much shine, which has always annoyed me so much about graphite pencils, that really annoying shine. But this, it has a little bit of shine, but really barely noticeable. It makes the world of difference to keeping your drawings looking realistic even when the light hits them. But even if you're using color pencils, you want to make sure that the colors that you're using and that you're picking for your drawings go through that whole value scale. You've got your light colors, you've got your mid-tone pencils, and you've also got those darker color pencils that can reach those darker values as well. And the third step is actually a bit of a controversial one, and it's how I approach my drawings. Quite a lot of the time, I will actually work from dark to light. Whereas a lot of people work light to dark. Both ways are absolutely fine, but there's a reason why I love working dark to light. And that is because I find that it really helps overcome this mindset problem, because a lot of the time we have that fear of ruining our drawing. We've already poured in lots of time going from light layers to dark layers that we get to a point where we kind of don't want to ruin it. So I like going in dark straight away and getting in those darkest values, because I'm working on a drawing that hasn't had all that time invested into it. So if I mess it up, I've got nothing to lose. I haven't got that fear or pressure as much because we're just starting the drawing. If I spend an hour and it doesn't look good, I can just start it again. I'm not 10 hours deep on a piece and then afraid to ruin it. So what I do is I go in with my darkest pencil, that 14B, and I just use it to actually fill in the darkest values that I can see on my subject, that I actually analysed earlier and swatched out. Wherever I saw those darkest values, I get them in first, whether that's the eyes or the darkest shadows in the hair. And same, I've done this with colour pencil as well. When I've been working on a portrait, I will go in and I will get in those darkest shadows, maybe with a black, but mostly with like a really dark brown. And I find that that just helps me get my values where it needs to be. I actually commit and press harder on that pencil and get them nice and dark. And what I also found as a byproduct of that is it helps you judge all of your other values, because you've got the white of the paper and you've got the really, really dark, potentially black values down on your paper. So you've got either end of the scale. You've got your lightest areas and your darkest areas. And now you can use that to help judge all of your in-between values. And I've just found that that helps me personally get a much more realistic result and better lighting in my drawing. And this may be something you love, it may be something you hate, but I definitely think it's worth trying it out and seeing for yourself. It may just be the thing you need to create more depth in your drawings. So value is a massive part of realistic drawing and to actually get depth in your drawings. But of course, there's so many other factors that determine how realistic your drawing is. So I recommend checking out my free realistic drawing mini class. It just goes through the essential fundamentals of realistic drawing that you can apply to any medium, and it will help give you that solid foundation on what to focus on if you're trying to improve your realistic drawings. And one thing I love about this free mini class is that it comes with a checklist. I basically created this checklist that will give you a list of all of the things you should check before you call a drawing finished. So things to check over so that you can improve your drawing, make tweaks that are going to make it more realistic. It's so important to learn all these skills if you want to create more realistic drawings. And as well as value, one of my favorite ways to increase the realism of my drawing is to use one specific tool. And in this video, I'm going to share with you what that tool is and how it can actually take the detail in your drawings to that next level. Check it out and I'll see you there. Bye everybody.